All right, before we start this next part here, we're talking about how to add images to our application. We need to get some images. So I'm going to OneDrive. And remember, the OneDrive account is mstcvgall at Hotmail because we haven't done a whole lot of that yet. Password student. But you need me to leave that up there a little longer? In here, there's an iOS development folder. Did you find it? I'm sorry, I forgot you haven't been there in a while. iOS development, Unit 4 in-class images. I would download that and maybe put it on your desktop.
Silly new system where you have to type in your email address and then click next to be able to sign in.
Yeah, that's a one-time bad deal on each machine, I think.
Oh, is it?
And it depends on how you get there as well. If you follow the link on my webpage, if you go to the iOS page or just go to my website, there's a OneDrive link there. It takes you to a more direct login screen than that one that says sign in and do two things.
They change it, you gotta go through everything, because that's what I just did.
Really?
Yep.
It's annoying. Probably it's a one-time bad deal. Once you've recognized on this machine, you should be okay. All right, here's my download. Remember, in the Mac, to unzip that, simply double-click it. And it unzips it, and then you can get rid of the zip file, put it in the trash. And there's a bunch of images in here, and I'm going to open that up in Finder so that I can see them. But there's no images in there. There they come.
Click on Unit 4 in-class images.
Okay, so there's a bunch of images. We see those. Make sure you leave those open someplace. Maybe go into icon view so that you can see them a little better. Leave those handy somewhere. Now let's talk about images. Everybody with me? You want me to pause a little bit?
Pause a little bit, because it's not downloading too quickly right now.
I don't know what it means, right, but
Okay, so let's talk about images a little bit. Before we can add images to the program, we first need to add the image file that we want to the project. And we just downloaded those, so I'm going to open up my Finder window. And in here I have 1, 2, 3 PNG images. Leave the icon alone for now, we'll cover that next time. But I want to grab these 3 images. They're just pictures of the 3 campuses. And we need to drag them to the supporting files folder over here. So I'm going to grab these 3 icons and simply drag them until supporting files lights up. Let go. And it says, do you want me to copy them? Yes. And go. And now that's all we need to do. It's part of the project now. Those have been copied over. So the originals are still on the desktop, but those images are now part of your project. Select the copy, and then the image should appear in the supporting files folder. If it appears anywhere else you missed, don't worry about it, just move them. You can actually move these files around anywhere you want to. Right, but images are supposed to be in supporting files just to make life a little bit easier. They can be just about anywhere. Having them in here will make them easier to find. Let's add an image to our project. So I'm going down to my toolbox here. I think I'm just going to type in image so I don't have to search too long. And there's my image view. And I'm going to drag that onto the page and just kind of park it in the middle down here at the bottom. First thing we're going to want to do is bring that image in, and then we're going to change the mode. So let's bring in the image. With the image selected, we go to the attributes inspector. If you don't see this, remember the attributes, this little guy up here shows you the attributes inspector, properties. Drop down the image, and there's my 3. We're in Stevens Point, so I'm going to grab it. Do you see the 3? Sometimes if you're quick, it takes a little while. You drag them over here, and you come over here, and you immediately try to pick it. It's not quite there. Give it a little time, it'll show up. And now it brings it in. We'll look at the mode. We can scale to fit or scale to fill. Okay. Notice when we do that, we can do the silly putty thing, and I'm not a big fan of that. There are other options here. Aspect fit does the best it can. Aspect fill will give you a little more space. So if you make it bigger, again, it just shows you a certain amount. That's kind of bizarre. And there's center, top, left, bottom, bottom, right, etc. Show me just the top corner.
It's kind of like a max height, max width.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be. My favorite is back to scale to fill.
Right in that aspect, because that doesn't stretch it.
If you move it around, it'll do weird things. You can experiment with it. Okay. My favorite is scale to fill, but then I add one more thing. Under the editor, I size to fit the content. So what I have already done for you, in this case, is taken the MSTC campus image and sized it appropriately. How do you know what size to make it? Just kind of experiment with it. Okay. I'll show you in a second here. You can find out the size. So now I've resized the object to fit my image instead of the other way around by going to editor, size to fit. It resized the object. Now I can move it or do whatever I want to. But if you want an image that's a certain size, I'm going to add another one you don't have to follow here. I'm going to add another image. Remember in the size inspector, I can see that this image this is its location, I believe. X, Y, there's its height and its width. If that's the size image I want, it's a 240 wide by 128 image high, if that's the size that I want. Or I can make it bigger or smaller, do whatever I want with it here, and then say, this is approximately the image I want. No more than 288 wide. Go into your favorite drawing program, manipulate your image so that it's 288 pixels wide. I wouldn't worry too much about the height because that we can adjust to. No reason bringing in this 3 megabyte picture when you're only going to put it on a phone and it's itty bitty. You wouldn't want to bring in a 3 megabyte picture on a phone because that'll take up 3 megabytes of space when you run your app. We don't want that.
How about the retina displays? Don't those use twice as many pixels?
They have twice as many pixels. It's something to look at, but I think it adjusts here automatically. More accuracy. All right, but we're in a 4-inch iPhone 6 that's a Retina display, I'm pretty sure, so it should be adjusting. What happens if we run this on a different device? It definitely could distort it, right, which is part of why we went into all of that other stuff. Let's go back. Now I have my picture. Remember in the attributes inspector, we're supposed to go in here, leave opaque, but clear the graphics content so that it loads a little bit faster. And if I go back to the, is it the size inspector? Yeah, the size inspector of my image, I can say, make this image, attach it to the top. But notice what's happening to the image. It'll resize, potentially, the way I have it right now as I rotate. But if I rotate this page, I'm going to have a mess anyways. Because I've got stuff that's so big that this rotated, this picture is going to be off the screen. Go ahead.
What I noticed, and I don't know if this makes a difference down the road, but the date picker,
Yeah.
if you adjust its height,
Yeah.
when you run it, the height doesn't adjust. But if
No,
you adjust
because
the
it
width,
sizes to fit to fill, because we have an attribute here that says size it to scale it to fill.
right, but if you adjust the width, it actually adjusts the width when you run it.
Right, it adjusts the width and the height as best as it can. Right, so there's limits, but if you turn this off, and again, it's kind of like a drawing, right? just say center it or redraw it or make it fit. In an aspect fit or an aspect fill, it'll do the best it can as you resize them, and it probably will resize as you run. And if not, it made a liar out of me. It won't be the last time. Let's fit the width. And it looks like it's about the same size. Might be a little bigger than it is here. So you can experiment. So with pictures, you have to be careful that they're a decent size coming in. You can scale them when they come in, but my advice is scale them like we did. Scale the image using the editor menu to fit the content. And if you don't like the way it looks, then resize the image so that the image is appropriate for what you want in that application. To create a background image, I move it to the back. I don't think I have anything that works. So let's just do that with the picture that we have. I add the image and stretch it and do all kinds of, this is really dumb, but there we go, nice stretched image, and then under editor, arrange, you can send it to the back. So that's how you create a background image. You just drag it on top of everything, and when I run this, I'm curious to see what it does. Should look normal, just really distorted.
What if we rotate that?
And now I've got a little different size with my emulator problem here, so something to take a look at. It's like the image is the same size, but it's not filling. My screen and my emulator are not quite the same size. That might be a 5.5 inch iPhone 6 that they're showing it to me. But that's how you do the background images. I'm going to just undo here, Command Z, until the picture goes back to where I had it. Like with Visual Studio, remember the first couple times you're playing with it, it takes some playing around and experimenting to get it to work. These should be the basic things that you want to worry about as we go. Text fields allow you to type. All right, so let's just add one underneath. I don't think its location is going to matter too much. I'm going to turn off my search, or let's just do a text. There's a text field versus a text view. A text view allows you to scroll. I'm going to add a text view over here, make it a little wider, and add a label to the beginning of it. And this is all going to set us up for when we start writing code. The annoying thing about these text boxes, and the reason I think my notes say to move it up, is watch what happens when I click inside there. This keyboard comes up. And I can type and it'll work okay. But imagine, and by the way, this is new in the new iOS. If you haven't installed it in your iOS devices, my iPad does it. It gives you suggestions for the words, kind of like Android's been doing for years. Android still does better, I feel. Right. But how do I get rid of this keyboard? You can click on something else. No. I can scroll. I don't get what stupid keyboard's not going away. Can I return? I didn't make it go away. If there's an annoying part of this, it's that the keyboard doesn't go away.
Usually it's the back button on your phone.
This one here?
No, you don't have one.
I don't have one, so you're suggesting the home button or something like that. And that didn't do it because it took me home. That was extreme. If you have a back button, you're thinking Android.
Android has a back button.
Yeah, Android has a back button. And here I launched it and it's gone, but as soon as I click in here again and want to start typing, now what? I'm getting no keyboard. That's really bizarre.
I don't have any, I never got a keyboard.
When you clicked in there, you didn't get a keyboard pop up?
I didn't get a keyboard, but I did get
A what?
I did get word suggestions.
Without the keyboard?
I don't get anything. Keyboard, I can just type.
Weird. So I'm gonna change this a little bit so it has to recompile.
What do you need though?
Build succeeded, click in here. And you're right, now I'm not getting anything either. Did I double click? No. How come I got a keyboard the first time?
Oh, it's telling me to swipe down to close.
That's only for the,
It's for that menu that kind of pops up.
Oh.
There's a bottom
Swipe
type
down
thing
there.
that brings this up, and then you can swipe
Yeah.
down, and you can swipe down the top and do things with it.
I managed to get like a keyboard to show what hardware or keyboard.
I got a keyboard right away.
Weird.
If you do a hardware keyboard, you can type on the computer.
There might be a property. Let's take a look at the text view here. No text, color.
There's a toggle software keyboard, Command K.
Also under hardware keyboard.
Wait, one at a time here. Keyboard type is the default. That's the type of keyboard that appears. And while we're there, let's talk about that briefly. You can change the type of keyboard, and this is something that's amazing to me how many apps don't do this. And supposedly in the new iOS 8, we programmers have complete control and could create our own keyboards even. But if you're asking somebody to enter in a web address, why wouldn't you put in a URL? Because then the keyboard includes a dot. It includes things like a www or a .com and those kinds of things. A number pad or a phone pad.
That drives me nuts when they're not there.
When they're not there, exactly, so thou shalt do it better, right? Particularly, I like the ones where it's an email address. I hate it when I have to, hit a couple of the shift keys to get to where I need to get the @ sign, which is always in there. It's because it wasn't there when the app was built, and nobody's bothered. If you pick one of these, the keyboard that appears will be the appropriate keyboard for what you ask for and make it easier to enter that kind of information. So do a better job than some people do.
They have a special one for Twitter. That's ridiculous.
Beyond me, I'm not a Twitter kind of guy. Here's the appearance, okay. Capitalization, if you want auto capitalization, notice we got some options. Capitalize the center or the sentences, capitalize words, all characters. Font size, the clear button. The clear button is a little X that appears to the right of the input field. So if the user wants to clear it, they can just clear the X. It's kind of like what we've done with the text here. There's an X that, if I click on this label, it should show it to me. Here's my text. No, there's no clear button, but the search, there it is. That little X, you can attach it to your own text boxes so the user can click it to wipe out the contents instead of having to swipe with their finger. With a mouse, it's relatively easy, but swiping with your finger to drag and then delete, it's not real easy. Right? So you can add your own clear button that appears while I'm editing or appears unless I'm editing. Meaning if the user wants to wipe it out, they gotta go someplace else and then click the X. I kind of like this one, or you can make it always visible.
I like always.
You don't like always because it's always there, or you do
No,
like it?
I do like
You
it
do like it.
on websites and apps.
Yep.
Because
So
I
that's,
like
I'm gonna let you pick it, but you get to define some. So while I'm editing, there we go. Let's try that with a run. Now we may be, the keyboard not showing up all the time may just be a side effect of us using the emulator. I'm not positive. It's weird that that keyboard's not showing up.
Off on the Command K.
No,
And there's my close button, or my clear button, right? And Command K brings up my keyboard, but it normally comes up automatically, so then bring it away again. Yeah, that's interesting. But on the app itself, there's no keyboard button on an iPhone that I know of.
I like your
Okay, we can bring it up here. That's nice, but why? And then how do I get rid of it using just my mouse or just my touch? We'll learn how to do that. It's code.
that's big keyword.
And also on the simulator under hardware, there's a thing for keyboard.
Yeah, that's nice, but that's a simulator. In the real world, there's no button that gets rid of that keyboard. We're going to write code so that when you click the return button, it gets rid of the keyboard. Or we can write code that says when I go to a different text box, or when I leave my text field and just click anywhere on the form, I can get rid of the keyboard. Or touch to get rid of the keyboard.
is that also written in code where, obviously it is, that's a stupid question, but when you fill out a text box, that it almost, like the app zooms in on the text box more or less, or?
Yeah, that's code, I think, unless there's a property for it. I haven't
didn't
seen
know
a
if
property.
there was a property or not.
Background disabled, am I back in my text box? I am. So plain text box again, if you want to put attributes in there, that makes it even more complicated. I haven't done that. We didn't talk about placeholder. Instead of having a label out here on the side, username, many people will put a placeholder in instead. The placeholder, press enter, goes inside the box to let the user know what to type.
That makes more sense.
In a way, it makes more sense, except once you filled it in, does it still make sense to what this text box is? If you can tell what the text box is based on its contents, then yes, it makes sense and you don't have to waste space with these labels. But that's what a placeholder is for, and as soon as you type something in there, then it goes away.
I like it for examples.
And examples come in handy too. And you can do both, right? There's no reason you can't do both.
If the user leaves it blank, does it take the placeholder text or empty string?
No, it treats it as blank. The placeholder text is literally that. So when you're looking at it in code, is what you're asking me. What's in the text box doesn't return the placeholder text.
Okay.
This is not a default value. It's placeholder text that goes away. I love the new keyboard because you can do smiley faces and all kinds of weird things. You can go to flowers and put Mises in there and so on. Isn't that exciting?
Are you still supposed to do the opaque clear graphics content for the Xbox?
Let's go try it. That's a good question. If I go back here, do I want my text box to also be opaque? So that's the attributes, scroll. This one has it off by default. That's interesting. Turn it on, clear the graphics content, and see if it changes anything when I run. Doesn't seem to. And notice my keyboard's back again. Where did that mean? Was that because the keyboard was up the last time I ran it, or what? Right, and now I can get rid of it pressing Control K, but my keyboard is back again, and it won't go away.
Command Q? Command K?
Nope. Command key all by itself?
Command K.
Command K, yes, but again, the point is, there's no such thing on a real phone. You can hide it, but how are you going to get rid of this keyboard for a real user if you don't provide code, and we'll learn how to do that next time. Okay, back over here. What else we got here? Placeholder, clear button on the X, capitalization, keyboard allows you to designate which keyboard. You can change the words on the return key when I have a keyboard. Okay, the return key says return. If you wish, you can change what's on that by going to the return key. Right, and you can say go or Google or join or next or search or send or whatever, done, whatever it is you want to put in there. Doesn't change the effect of the key, it simply changes the text that's on it. And that, I think, also changes based on the keyboard. So I'm going to change my keyboard here to a email keyboard. Run again. Okay, now when I click inside here, I get an email keyboard. Notice the @ sign and the dot. Those are not part of a normal keyboard. Right, my goofy characters are still here. That's fun. And I can get to the other keys, but I have to click the magic keys. Okay, and what was I testing? There was something else I was thinking about.
Email.
Pardon me?
You would set it to email.
I set it to email, but the question I had for myself was, there was some other the return key. I didn't change it. And it's still returned. But I could change that to a done or whatever I want by changing the key here. But I think other keyboards might have different, like if I change this to a Google keyboard, I would expect the key, if I change it to a URL, would I expect it to say go? Maybe. I'm just checking to see if the return key ever changes to anything else. Stuck. There it goes, still building. it's still returned. But notice now that I have a URL, I have a .com button to make things a little easier. Not that all web addresses have those anymore.
And a slash.
And a slash, that comes in handy. Okay, back to my notes. What else did I forget here? Auto enable the return key when checked. It disables the return key, until the user enters at least one character. So you can't return with an empty box. Big deal. There's a secure feature. If you choose a secure, it gives you password type box. The characters appear as you type them, but then they're covered up with a dot. It's an iOS feature that the letters actually appear as you type them, so you can type, you can see what you're typing, but other people can't see it because unless they're watching the whole thing, can't see the finished product.
I'm pretty sure there's a setting in all the phones you can change that, turn it off.
To turn it off, yeah, probably. And by the way, he was talking about settings in the phones to turn that off. You do have the opportunity, if you press the home key, to get back to the main one and actually change your settings in this virtual phone. And it will remember those settings on this device. This is an actual device that you're looking at here, and any settings changes you make, it'll remember. Okay, so that's how we add stuff, and you can play around with a few of the other objects when the time comes. But now we need to get to the concepts of outlets and actions. And for the life of me, I can never remember these words when I need them. Don't know why. In order for your code to manipulate an object on the screen, it needs to have an outlet defined for that object. Outlets allow you to change the attributes of an object. In Visual Studio, it's automatic. Right? You have access to all of those things. But notice we never gave any of these things names. There's no place to put a name, because there is no name property of the object itself. If you want to manipulate the object, you have to create an outlet. If you want the object to respond to events, you have to create an action. An action is the iOS equivalent of an event. Once you create the event, then you create the handler for the event, and you write code in there, say, here's what I want you to do for this action on this object. So the two are separate, and you can create one or both depending on your needs for the application. If you want to change the appearance of a button, you create an outlet. If you want to obviously attach an event handler for that button, then you create an action. How do you do these things? This statement about them needing to be wired, that's true. Actions need to be wired to their objects. This is an iOS term. We'll see this in a second, or maybe not today. But let's define an outlet. What my notes suggest is that when you're ready to define an outlet, go to the storyboard and turn on the assistant editor. It looks like a little butler's, that's what it's supposed to be, is a butler's chest with a butler's button, and it's kind of an assistant. So here we are. I want to see the assistant. Notice by default it's off. It's way up here. And again, remembering last year, this was an ongoing process for me to remember what all of these buttons everywhere do that can just make you crazy sometimes. So I'm going to turn on the assistant editor. And if your screen's too small, mine's pretty big here, this is why I'm recording full screen, you should be able to see the attributes over here. If you need to, you can temporarily hide them and gain a little more space, or bring them back if you need them. But while we're doing outlets and actions, you shouldn't need your attributes too much, so I'm going to hide them. You can resize the portions of the screen so we can see lots of code over here and scroll there. I can see my entire phone over here. You get to be pretty good at manipulating your screen. To create an outlet, simply drag the object from the scene/view, not simply drag. I think I'm going to check my keyboard here. It's one of the keys. Close, resize, control, drag. Control, drag, not option, not command. It's another thing that's going to make you crazy after a while, is control drag. So let's take this label that's empty, and I'm going to control drag it from here into, notice what's happening? I'm getting a wire. That's what they call it. I'm wiring it. I'm wiring that option to the view controller code. I've experimented. It turns out you can put these just about anywhere except inside of a function because it doesn't work very well inside there. So I'm going to put it inside at the top. A pop-up shows up. So what do you want? An outlet or an outlet collection? Since this is a label, it can't respond to events. If you want labels or pictures to respond to events, there's an attribute that you have to turn on first, because labels don't typically respond to clicks or something like that. Pictures don't typically do that. I skipped it in my notes. There is an attribute. We'll go look at it in a second. If this were a button, we'd have a choice. What do you want to do with this? Do you want to create an outlet, or do you want to create an event handler in action? In this case, we don't have much choice. Now we give it a name. So my outlet gets a name. My advice is use the same standards that we used before, like LBL subtitle or whatever I want to call this thing. Occasionally this pops up as a UI object. In this case, because it's only an outlet, it's automatically a label. We'll just stick with weak for right now. If our code goes to sleep, or if our app goes to sleep, or if our app gets overwritten by something else, how do you want the storage for this object to be retained? It's complicated. We'll save that probably for next semester. Just leave it as weak for right now and connect. An outlet is created. Notice we're in Swift. Right. This is a built-in class. Weak variable. This is new for me. LBL subtitle. That's what we call this label. And notice it is a label that might be null. Remember, the exclamation mark means nullable, right? Basically. But now if we wanted to, in view did load, just as an example, I can write some code here, like LBL subtitle. Where's my help? And now I can change some of its stuff, like its text. Equals MSTC or whatever you want to do. Make sure the text stays capitalized. Lowercase means something different, I believe. Nope. I guess it should be lowercase. And now if we run this view did load is like form load. It'll take the text of this label and change it to MSTC. And then I can go change its color. I can change its font. I can change whatever I want. Now that I have an outlet, I can change any of the attributes of that object. Those are outlets. I'm guessing we can respond to events in text box. I'll tell you what, let's just add a button. So I'm going to go to my form here, and I lost my toolbox here, so I'm going to bring it back. Clear out my search. This also confuses me. I don't like to do this search very often, because when I do the search, all I see here is labels, and I have to remember to clear the search if I want to then go find something else like buttons. Here's a button, drag it onto my form someplace, give it some text. And stretch it. Notice how buttons don't get much of an appearance. We'll learn how to fix that later on. Buttons in iOS are just text that are a different color, but they are buttons. And I haven't tested this, and my notes have not been updated yet, but when I control drag this, please, I can change it to either an outlet or an action. An outlet collection, I believe if I remember right, is when a bunch of outlets all respond to the same, or a bunch of objects all respond to the same event. Okay, or we change them all the same way. But if I wanted to, I'm going to create an action here because I haven't done this. So I'm a little curious to see what happens. Give this as a name. So this is btn click. Type is any object. This is the part where you normally change it to a button because why make it generically typed? Occasionally there's a reason, but it's pretty rare. Which event? Lots of events to handle. Touch up inside is basically why Paul's squinting at me. Why does it matter? Where's the click event? Well, what if you change your mind? You're holding on the button. You go, no, don't do that. Don't save or don't cancel or don't delete. If you move your finger off the object, it will not run the event. If you touch it and let go and you're still inside, then it executes this event. That's the most common. That's basically a click event with the option to cancel. So this I haven't done. This is where I'm going. That looks good. Arguments, we can have a sender sent in, who sent it, so we can have the same code for multiple buttons and figure out which button it is later. Connect. And cool, look what I got. I got an IB action function called button click with a sender object that is a button. And then curly brackets. So I've got an option, I've got an action function built in. In the old days, we used to get the object, and then we had to go write the code, and then we had to connect the code to the header, and oh my God. Yes, ma'am.
What happens if, or do you know how to go back and change it? Like, oh, I want this button to, you know.
You don't want it to be you want to give it a different name, or you want you delete this code. It should be that simple. Now I take that back. I think it's a little more complicated than that because once you delete the code, there may be some wiring left over, just like there was in Visual Studio. That's coming in my notes. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here.
I assume you can add multiples with different options.
Sure. Right. You usually only have one outlet because you can use that outlet to change anything. But you can have multiple event handlers with that respond to different events. Okay? And that's why I like to put the name of the event type, and click isn't really appropriate here, but where does it say here that this responds to the key up, or whatever it was called? I believe it says it somewhere else. Swift controller, I gotta dig for that. This is new, right? I'm inside this event handler. Let's just do something simple like my LBL subtitle dot color. That's not a property. So what's the property?
Text color?
It says color here. Was text color there?
Yeah.
There it is. Equals. And now what's the color class? Let's try UI color. Ha! Dot. Black, blue, brown. Blue sounds good.
In parentheses after, that's weird.
So that one says it's a method, right? See what that does. You're right. I would think that that'd be a property, right? Not a method, that it would be, or it would be an enumeration of my color class. Let's see what it does. Worst that'll happen is you'll lock up Xcode and have to wait for the whole system to reboot for half an hour. But you're good at that. Did it? Change it to blue. I agree though, it seems to me that that ought to be a little easier. What other options do I have here? I believe it's command space to bring the list up. Nope, that's the spotlight. Control space, there we go. Blue, black, I don't see.
Type in the first letter to tell me what.
Yeah, but they're all with parentheses by the looks of it. That's what I'm looking at here. Here comes gray, here comes green. I don't see these as enumeration values. I see them as methods of some kind. And there is a UI color, RGB, etc. And you can define your own colors if you don't like these fixed colors. Clicking the wrong one, that one. Woof. Thanks, green. That's farther than I've gone, but let me tell you how lucky you are with Swift. You say, give me an event handler, and poof, it creates a function and you write code. Compared to the nonsense we had to go through last year, that's much, much simpler. So what pardon me?
I've heard,
You've heard, yeah, how lucky you are. I'm sure Devin will tell you many times how lucky you are.
yes.
These little dots here, ultimately, notice, I can click the dots and it'll show me who it's connected to. So the assistant can come in very handy. I don't need to see a whole lot of this, but once you've got them wired, then you're writing code all the time, and you could close this window, and I think there's a way to do that, or just minimize it, and now it's gone, and then bring it back again, and if I can remember how, that's always a challenge, so now I've really made a mess. So I need to quit making messes here till I know what the heck I'm doing. Here's all our objects. It's an object inspector, and one of these buttons probably gets me back to where I was before. Now I've added me more. I'm going to stop while I'm behind. Whoa, lovely. Not cool. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording before I embarrass myself, and then we'll pick up with this next time.